The Russian president has called the clashes between Ukrainian and Russian vessels in the Kerch Strait on Sunday a ratings stunt, as Kiev's authorities look ahead to the 2019 presidential election.
The current Kiev authorities successfully sell anti-Russian sentiment because they have nothing else to sell. There's a feeling that whatever they do, they will get away with. If they demand newborns for breakfast, they will get babies. So what? They'll say the government wants to eat.
Well, the Russian leader also said that the implementation of martial law this Wednesday in some areas of Ukraine is a pretext to postpone the election. Vladimir Putin stressed that Kiev's authorities didn't introduce it during some of the country's worst moments in the ongoing civil war. RT's Murat Gazdiev has been following the international reaction to all the developments for us.
Central European powers, France, Germany in particular, seem to be less than enthusiastic about America's latest calls for more sanctions against Russia. Germany in particular saying that it is still supporting the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from Russia to Central Europe. This follows on from various US officials' calls to enforce and to strengthen sanctions against Russia.
We certainly encourage our European allies to look harder at what additional sanctions could be implemented. I've seen at this point that it's not something Germany and France have said they're considering, but these things, I think, can develop over time.
US President Donald Trump himself asked on whether he's going to condemn Russia's actions in the US. Well, he spoke more critically of Russia than he has in a long while, but he said that he's going to wait for a full report from his advisors before condemning any Russian action.
That will be very determinative. Maybe I won't have the meeting. Maybe I won't even have the meeting. I don't like that aggression. I don't want that aggression at all, absolutely. And by the way, Europe shouldn't like that aggression, and Germany shouldn't like that aggression.
He's referring there, of course, to the pre-agreed meeting with Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Argentina. The Russians have also heard what Donald Trump has to say, and they say that they're ready to correct Vladimir Putin's schedule if and when needed, a schedule that is written down to the minute. But we've also heard a lot of criticism in the press, and the anti-Russian press especially, with calls and questions to Donald Trump and other leaders on why they aren't condemning Russia hard enough.
We've let our position be known, and we're not happy about it.
President Trump issued an extremely mild rebuke to Russia for firing on and seizing 3 Ukrainian ships.
Other staunch supporters of Ukraine, be it nations, the Great Britain and Canada, for example, that have condemned Russia, or be it third parties such as NGOs, think tanks, the Atlantic Council. One of their pundits has been calling on NATO to send warships to the Azov Sea through the Strait crossing, perhaps unaware that such a move would be illegal, as the Azov Sea is internal waters of Russia and Ukraine and requires the permission of both for third-party warships to enter the Azov Sea. The Russians have offered their own version as to what happened in the on Sunday in the Strait of Kerch. They say they detected the Ukrainian vessels. They had no choice but to deploy weapons, to use weapons, to seize these vessels as they were behaving dangerously, erratically. They hadn't filed any notification. The SBU counter-espionage agents were on board. They also say that this was a provocation. The Russian foreign minister, his words just recently, this was a provocation intended to rile things up.
Washington and some other European capitals are ready to perform any whim of the Ukrainian regime. I'd like the representative of the US for Ukrainian conflict, Mr. Volker, to play a representative role of someone who is trying to seek consent between 2 conflicting sides. Firstly Kiev, and on the other side, Donetsk and Lugansk.
Ukraine, on its part, remains adamant that it is innocent, blameless. Its crews, the 24 sailors, officers and SBU agents that were detained here in the Strait of Kerch, they call on Russia to immediately release the 3 vessels and the crews and say that this was an act of war, an act of aggression carried out by Russia.
Well, we asked political scientist John Laughlin for his take on just some of what Murat was going through there. He believes some officials in Washington are piling the pressure on Donald Trump in order to justify those sanctions on Russia.
As we know, Trump has been under massive pressure, obviously, on the Russian issue ever since he was elected. And what the Ukrainians and probably their allies in the Pentagon and the State Department surely calculate is that they need to keep up that pressure. They need to keep up the flow of events. They need to keep up the flow of incidents which justify either new sanctions or meetings cancelled or whatever. So I think this is clearly part of a strategy on the part of the Ukrainian side and indeed on the part of its allies in the West. So we can see that the West, the Americans and its European allies and their European allies are determined to increase the tension with Russia, to increase the tension.